Danny Cole had worked on Horizon's Edge for 3 years. It was a big space station that floated between 2 star systems. Ships came and went every day. Aliens from a dozen different worlds walked through its metal halls. Danny fixed things. That was his job. Broken pipes, bad wires, doors that would not open. Simple work for simple pay. He liked it that way. No drama, no politics. Just him, his tools, and the quiet hum of the station at night. Danny was 32 years old. He had brown hair that was always a little messy and tired eyes that had seen too many late shifts. He was not tall, not short, not handsome, not ugly. Just a regular guy from a small town on Earth who had decided that the stars were better than staying home. He did not talk much to the aliens. Not because he hated them. He just did not know what to say. Their cultures were strange. Their languages were hard. And most of them looked at humans like they were children who had just learned to walk among the grown-ups of the galaxy. But Danny was polite. He nodded when he passed them in the halls. He said thank you when they held doors. He did not start fights. And he did not pick sides in the arguments that sometimes broke out in the cantina. He was, by all measures, a very boring man that changed on a cold Tuesday night in the lower cargo bay. Danny had been sent to fix a heating unit. The lower levels of the station were always cold because the environmental systems were old and nobody wanted to spend money to replace them. Danny did not mind. He had a thick jacket and a thermos of hot coffee. He could handle the cold. He was halfway through the repair when he saw her. She was sitting on a cargo crate in the corner. Her skin was blue, a deep shade like the ocean on Earth. She had 4 arms, 2 on each side, and her fingers were long and thin. Her eyes were large and silver, and they caught the dim light like mirrors. She was tall, maybe 7 feet, but she was curled up small, her arms wrapped around herself. She was shivering. Danny stopped working. He watched her for a moment. She did not seem to notice him. Her eyes were fixed on the floor, and her whole body trembled like a leaf in the wind. He knew what she was. A Varani. He had seen a few of them on the station before. They came from a hot world, a planet of deserts and red sand. The cold hit them hard. Their bodies were not made for it. Danny looked at his toolkit. He had a thermal blanket in there. He always carried one. You never knew when you would be stuck in a cold part of the station for hours. He should have kept working. It was not his business. She was not his problem. But Danny could not look away. She looked so alone, so tired, so cold. He sighed, put down his wrench, and walked over to her. She looked up when he got close. Her silver eyes widened. She said something in her language, something Danny did not understand. Her voice was soft and shaky. Danny held up his hands to show he meant no harm. Then he reached into his bag and pulled out the thermal blanket. It was silver and crinkly, the kind that trapped body heat. He unfolded it slowly and held it out to her. She stared at it. Then she stared at him. Danny smiled. He did not know if Velraine understood human smiles, but he hoped she would get the message. He stepped closer and gently draped the blanket over her shoulders. She flinched at first. Then she pulled the blanket tighter around herself. The shivering slowed down a little. Danny reached into his bag again. He had a meal bar in there. He had not eaten it yet. He was saving it for later, but she probably needed it more than he did. He held it out to her. She looked at the bar, then at him. Her silver eyes were wet now. She said something else in her language. It sounded like a question. Danny shrugged. He did not know what she was asking. He just pushed the bar closer to her hand. She took it. Her long fingers wrapped around it carefully, like it was something precious. Danny nodded. Then he sat down on a crate near her. Not too close. He did not want to scare her, but close enough that she would know she was not alone. They sat like that for maybe 20 minutes. Danny did not say much. He just sipped his coffee and let the silence fill the space between them. Sometimes he glanced at her. She was eating the meal bar slowly, small bites, like she wanted to make it last. When she finished, she looked at him again. This time, her eyes were different, softer, warmer. She said one word. Danny did not know what it meant, but it sounded like a thank you. He smiled again and gave her a small wave. Then he stood up, grabbed his toolkit, and went back to fixing the heating unit. When he finished the repair, he looked back at the corner. She was gone. The thermal blanket was folded neatly on the crate where she had been sitting. Danny picked it up and put it back in his bag. He did not think much about what had happened. He had helped someone who was cold. That was all. It was what any decent person would do. He went back to his quarters, took a hot shower, and went to sleep. He did not know that the Voronoi female had a name. Kyraveth. He did not know that she had been watching him for weeks, trying to find the courage to speak to him. He did not know that among her people, what he had just done was not a small thing. On her world, offering warmth to a stranger was a sacred act. Sharing food was even more sacred. And sitting with someone in silence, offering comfort without asking for anything in return, was the first step in a bonding ritual that had been practiced for 10,000 years. Danny Cole had just proposed marriage, and Kyraveth had accepted. She walked back to her small room on the station with the taste of the meal bar still on her tongue and a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the blanket. She had found him. The one her grandmother had told her about when she was a child. The one who would offer kindness without conditions. Her mate. She whispered his name to herself. The name she had learned from the station records. Danny Cole. It was a strange name. Short and simple. But she liked the way it sounded. Tomorrow, she would begin the second stage of the ritual. She would bring him gifts. She would show him that she was worthy of his warmth. And Danny Cole, sleeping peacefully in his bed, had no idea what was coming. 3 days passed. Danny had forgotten about the Voronoi female. He had a lot of work to do. The station was old, and things broke every day. He spent his time crawling through vents, fixing broken panels, and complaining about the lack of spare parts. On the 4th day, he found a small box outside his door. It was made of dark wood, carved with symbols he did not recognize. Danny looked up and down the hall. Nobody was there. He picked up the box and brought it inside. When he opened it, his jaw dropped. Inside were crystals. Dozens of them. They were clear like glass but filled with swirling colors, blue and purple and gold. They caught the light and threw tiny rainbows across his walls. Danny knew what these were. Voronoi memory crystals. They were rare. They were valuable. A single one could buy a small ship. There were at least 30 in the box. Danny stared at them for a long time. Then he put the lid back on and set the box on his table. Someone had made a mistake. These were not meant for him. They could not be. He went to work and tried to forget about it. The next day, there was another gift. This time, it was a piece of fabric, soft and silver, folded neatly in front of his door. It smelled like flowers from a world he had never visited. Danny picked it up and felt how smooth it was. It was beautiful. He was starting to get worried. On the 6th day, he found out who was leaving the gifts. He was working in the maintenance bay, replacing a broken pump when he heard footsteps behind him. He turned around and saw her, the Voronoi female from the cargo bay. She was standing a few feet away, her forearms held at her sides. She was wearing a long robe, dark blue with golden edges. Around her neck was a chain with a small crystal hanging from it. She was looking at him with those big silver eyes. And there was something in her expression that made Danny nervous. She stepped closer and held out her hands. In them was a piece of cloth, red and gold, with tassels at the ends. It looked like a sash or a belt. She said something in her language. Danny shook his head. I do not understand, he said. She tried again, slower this time. Her voice was soft and musical, but the words meant nothing to him. Danny pointed to himself. Danny, he said. My name is Danny. She nodded. Then and why, she repeated. Then she pointed to herself. Kiraveth. Danny smiled a little. Nice to meet you, Kiraveth. She smiled back. Then she stepped even closer and tried to wrap the red and gold sash around his wrist. Danny pulled his hand back. Wait, what are you doing? She looked confused. She held out the sash again, gesturing toward his arm. Danny shook his head. I am sorry. I do not know what this is. I cannot accept it. He saw something change in her eyes. Hurt, confusion, but only for a moment. Then her expression shifted to something like determination. She nodded slowly, tucked the sash into her robe, and stepped back. She said something else, something that sounded like a promise. Then she turned and walked away. Danny stood there, holding his wrench, wondering what had just happened. He found Lisa Morrow in the cantina an hour later. Lisa was his only real friend on the station. She was a cargo handler, short and loud, with red hair and a laugh that could be heard 3 decks away. She was eating a bowl of noodles when Danny sat down across from her. I need help, he said. Lisa raised an eyebrow. With what? Danny told her everything. The cargo bay, the blanket and the food, the gifts appearing at his door, the Varani female trying to tie something around his wrist. Lisa started laughing before he finished. Danny frowned. This is not funny. Lisa wiped tears from her eyes. Oh, it is very funny. Danny, do you have any idea what you did? I helped someone who was cold. Lisa shook her head. No, you proposed to her. Danny's face went pale. What? Lisa leaned forward. Velrani courtship rituals. I read about them once. If you give a Velrani warmth, food, and companionship, you are telling them you want to bond with them. It is like the first step in a marriage proposal. Danny felt his stomach drop. That is crazy. I did not know. I was just being nice. Lisa shrugged. Humans are nice, but other species do not always understand that. To her, you made a promise, and now she is trying to complete the ritual. Danny put his head in his hands. What do I do? Talk to her. Explain that it was a mistake. Danny looked up. I tried. She does not speak English, Lisa thought for a moment. Then go to Pete Harris. He is the cultural liaison. He knows about all this stuff. Danny nodded. He pushed away from the table and headed for Pete's office. Pete Harris was an old man with gray hair and a face full of wrinkles. He had been on the station for 20 years. He knew more about alien cultures than anyone else Danny had ever met. Danny explained the situation. Pete listened without interrupting. When Danny finished, Pete let out a long sigh. You are in trouble, he said. Danny groaned. I know. Pete pulled up something on his computer. Velrani bonding rituals have 7 stages. You completed stage 1 when you gave her the blanket and food. She's now trying to complete stage 2 by giving you gifts and a ceremonial sash. What happens if she completes all 7 stages? Pete looked at him. The bond becomes legal. Under interstellar treaty law, you would be considered her mate. It would be recognized by every government in the galaxy. Danny felt like the room was spinning. How do I stop it? Pete's face grew serious. There is a formal rejection right. You would have to stand in front of witnesses and declare that she is unworthy of your warmth. It is a public insult. It would shame her and her entire family for generations. Danny stared at him. I cannot do that. She did not do anything wrong. She is just following her customs. Pete nodded slowly. then you have a problem, because she's not going to stop. In Velroni culture, rejection only makes them try harder. They see it as a test. The more you push her away, the more she will believe you are testing her devotion. Danny sat back in his chair. He did not know what to say. Pete closed his computer. My advice? Find another way. Talk to her somehow. Learn about her people. Maybe you can figure out a solution that does not destroy her life. Danny thanked him and left the office. He walked back to his quarters in a daze. When he got there, he found another gift waiting for him. A small statue, carved from stone, of two figures standing side by side. One had 4 arms. The other had 2. He picked it up and looked at it for a long time. Somewhere on the station, Karaveth was waiting, planning, preparing for the next stage, and Danny had no idea how to stop her without breaking her heart. Danny tried to avoid Karaveth. It did not work. She was everywhere. When he went to the cantina for breakfast, she was sitting at a table near the door, watching him with those silver eyes. When he walked to the maintenance bay, she followed at a distance, never getting too close, but never letting him out of her sight. When he finished his shift and went back to his quarters, he could feel her presence somewhere behind him. She was not being scary. She was not threatening him. She was just there, always there, like a shadow made of blue skin and hope. Danny felt guilty. He knew she was not doing anything wrong. In her mind, she was doing everything right. She was proving her devotion. She was showing him that she would wait for him, no matter how long it took. But he had no idea how to fix this. Lisa thought it was still funny. She made jokes about it at lunch. She called Karaveth his future wife and asked when the wedding would be. Danny did not laugh. I need to find another way, he told her. I cannot just ignore her forever. Lisa shrugged. Then learn about her people. Figure out what makes them tick. Maybe there is some loophole you can use. It was not a bad idea. Danny went to the station library that night. It was a small room filled with data screens and old books that nobody read anymore. He found a terminal and searched for everything he could about the Velroni. He read for hours. He learned that the Velroni came from a harsh world. Their planet was hot and dry, and water was rare. They had learned to survive by working together, by forming bonds that could not be broken. A Velroni alone was a Velroni who would die. Their entire culture was built on connection, on loyalty, on the idea that once you made a promise, you kept it forever. The bonding ritual was the heart of their society. It was not just about romance. It was about trust. It was about finding someone who would stand beside you no matter what, who would share their warmth with you when the world turned cold. Danny read about the 7 stages. Stage 1 was the offering of warmth and food. Stage 2 was the exchange of gifts. Stage 3 was the defense of honor. Stage 4 was the wearing of the bond marker. Stage 5 was the sharing of stories. Stage 6 was the trial of trust. Stage 7 was the final vow. He had completed Stage 1 without knowing it. Karaveth had completed Stage 2 by leaving gifts at his door. That meant Stage 3 was next. The defense of honor. Danny did not know what that meant. He hoped he would never find out. He was wrong. 2 days later, Danny was in the cantina, eating a bowl of rice and vegetables. The place was busy. Workers from a dozen species sat at tables, talking and laughing and arguing about things Danny did not care about. A group of Krogoth traders sat at a table near him. The Krogoth were big. They had thick gray skin, wide shoulders, and faces that looked like they were made for frowning. They were known for being rude and aggressive, but they had money, so the station let them stay. One of them pointed at Danny and said something in his language. The others laughed. Danny ignored them. He kept eating, but the Krogoth did not stop. The leader stood up and walked over to Danny's table. He was huge, almost 8 feet tall, with arms as thick as Danny's whole body. "Human," he said in broken English. "You are small, weak. Why do you sit here like you belong?" Danny looked up at him. "I am just eating. I do not want trouble." The Krogoth grinned, showing rows of yellow teeth. "Trouble finds the weak. Maybe I take your food. Maybe I take your seat. What will you do, little human?" Danny felt his heart beat faster. He was not a fighter. He had never been a fighter. He knew that if this Krogoth decided to hurt him, there was nothing he could do to stop it. He started to stand up, ready to just leave and find somewhere else to eat. Then he heard her voice. Kiroveth stepped out of the crowd like she had been waiting for this moment. She stood between Danny and the Krogoth, all four of her arms raised in a fighting stance. Her silver eyes were cold and hard. She spoke in a voice that Danny had never heard before. It was loud and sharp, full of authority. She was speaking in the Krogoth language, and whatever she said made the big alien take a step back. The Krogoth snarled something at her. Kiroveth did not move. She said something else, slower this time, and raised one of her arms to point at the traitor's chest. The cantina went quiet. Everyone was watching. The Krogoth looked at her. Then he looked at his friends. Then he looked back at Kiroveth. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then the Krogoth turned around and walked back to his table. His friends followed him. They did not look at Danny again. The noise in the cantina slowly returned to normal. Danny stood there, his legs shaking. He looked at Kiroveth, who had lowered her arms and was now standing calmly in front of him. "What did you say to him?" he asked. Kiroveth turned to face him. For the first time, she smiled. It was a small smile, soft and warm, and it made her face look different, younger, kinder. She said one word, pointing at herself. Defend. Danny understood. She had defended his honor. Stage 3 was complete. He did not know what to say. He should have been upset. He should have told her that he did not need her help, that he could take care of himself, that she needed to stop following him around. But he did not feel upset. He felt something else, something warm in his chest that he could not explain. "Thank you," he said. Kiroveth's smile grew wider. She reached out with one of her hands and touched his arm, very gently, just for a moment. Then she turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Danny sat back down at his table. His food was cold, but he ate it anyway. He thought about what he had read in the library, about bonds that could not be broken, about finding someone who would stand beside you no matter what. He thought about Kiroveth, standing in front of that Krogoth, ready to fight for him. A human she barely knew. A man who had given her a blanket and a meal bar. Maybe, he thought, this was not such a bad thing after all. He did not know yet that he was already changing, that the walls around his heart were starting to crack, that somewhere deep inside, he was beginning to see Kiroveth not as a problem to solve, but as a person worth knowing. Stage 3 was complete, and for the first time, Danny was not sure he wanted to stop what was happening. Danny could not stop thinking about her. He tried to focus on his work. He fixed pipes and rewired circuits and replaced broken panels. But his mind kept going back to Kiroveth, to the way she had stood in front of that Krogoth without any fear, to the softness of her smile after it was over. He wanted to know more about her. The next day, he went back to the library. He searched for information about Velrani warriors. What he found surprised him. The Velrani had a warrior class called the Kethvar. They were trained from childhood to fight and to protect. They were the defenders of their people, the ones who stood between their families and danger. To be Kethvar was the highest honor a Velrani could have. Danny searched for Kiroveth's name. He did not expect to find anything, but he did. There was a news article from 3 years ago. It was in Velrani, but the station's computer could translate it. The article told the story of a battle. A war between the Velrani and another species called the Dreth. The Velrani had won, but at a great cost. Thousands had died on both sides. After the battle, a group of Dreth soldiers had been captured. They were prisoners of war. The Velrani command had ordered them to be executed. Kyraveth had refused. She was a Kethver captain. She had led her warriors through the worst of the fighting. She had seen death and pain and suffering. But when she was ordered to kill prisoners who could no longer fight back, she had said no. She had argued that the Dreth soldiers had surrendered, that killing them would be murder, not war. That the Velrani were better than that. The command had not listened. They had stripped her of her rank and her honor. They had called her a coward and a traitor. They had exiled her from her homeworld and told her to never return. She had been alone ever since. Danny sat in the library for a long time after he finished reading. He thought about Kyraveth, wandering the galaxy with no home and no family. Thought about her sitting alone in that cold cargo bay, shivering and lost. And then a human she had never met had given her a blanket and a meal bar and sat with her in the silence. Danny understood now. It was not just about the ritual. It was about hope. He had shown her that kindness still existed, that not everyone in the universe was cruel. He had given her something to believe in. Danny made a decision that night. He was going to talk to her. Really talk to her. He was going to learn her language, learn her story, learn who she was. He found a language program in the station's database. Velrani was hard. The words were long and the sounds were strange. But Danny worked at it every night after his shifts. He practiced until his throat hurt. He memorized words and phrases and tried to put them together in the right order. It took 2 weeks before he was ready. He found Kyraveth in the observation deck. It was a big room with windows that looked out at the stars. She was sitting alone, as always, her silver eyes reflecting the light of distant suns. Danny walked over and sat down next to her. She looked at him with surprise. He took a deep breath and spoke in Velrani. It was rough and broken, but he tried his best. "I want to know you," he said. "Tell me your story." Kyraveth's eyes went wide. For a moment, she did not move. Then something changed in her face. The walls she had built around herself, the same walls Danny had built around his own heart, started to crack. She spoke. Slowly at first, then faster. Danny did not understand every word, but he understood enough. He heard about her childhood, about her training, about the pride she had felt when she became Kethver. He heard about the war, about the blood and the fire and the screams. He heard about the moment she had refused to follow orders, about the look in the prisoner's eyes when she had set them free instead of killing them. He heard about the exile, about the years of wandering, about the loneliness that had eaten away at her soul until she had almost given up. And then she told him about the night in the cargo bay, about seeing a human walk toward her with kindness in his eyes, about the warmth of the blanket and the taste of the food, about the hope that had sparked a life in her chest for the first time in years. She spoke for hours. Danny listened to every word. When she finished, there were tears in her silver eyes. She looked at him like she was waiting for him to run away, to tell her she was broken and worthless. Like everyone else had told her. Danny did not run. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the red and gold sash. He had kept it. He did not know why, but he had kept it all this time, hidden in a drawer in his quarters. Kyraveth stared at it. Danny looked at her. His heart was beating fast. His hands were shaking, but he knew what he wanted to do. He wrapped the sash around his own wrist. Kyraveth made a sound. It was soft and broken, something between a gasp and a cry. Her hands came up to cover her mouth. "Stage 4, Danny said in Velrani. "Complete." For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Kyraveth reached out and touched the sash on his wrist. Her fingers were warm. Her touch was gentle. She said something. Danny did not catch all of it, but he understood the last word. Made. He smiled at her. It was the first real smile he had given anyone in years. "I'm not doing this because of the ritual," he said, switching back to English. He knew she could understand some of it now. "I am doing this because I want to. Because you deserve someone who sees you for who you are." KindnessHFY leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his. Danny had read about this. It was a Velrani gesture of deep trust. It meant she was letting him see her soul. They sat like that for a long time, foreheads touching, breathing the same air. While the stars burned outside the window, Danny did not know what the future would bring. He did not know if they would face challenges or judgment or fear. But he knew one thing for certain. He was not going to let her be alone again. Stage 4 was complete. 3 more stages to go. And for the first time, Danny was looking forward to them. Word spread quickly across Horizon's Edge. A human had willingly entered a Velrani bonding ritual. It was not a mistake. It was not a trick. Danny Cole, the quiet maintenance worker who fixed broken things and kept to himself, had chosen to bond with an alien. Some people thought he was crazy. Others thought he was brave. A few thought he was just lonely and did not know what he was getting himself into. Danny did not care what they thought. The next 3 stages came quickly. Stage 5 was the sharing of stories. Danny and KindnessHFY spent long nights in the observation deck, talking about their lives. He told her about Earth, about the small town where he grew up, about the mother who had died when he was young, and the father who had worked too hard and loved too little. He told her about leaving home, about finding a job on the station, about the years of loneliness that had made him forget what connection felt like. KindnessHFY told him more about her world, about the red deserts and the burning sky, about her family, who she would probably never see again, about the dreams she used to have before the war had taken everything from her. They learned each other's languages. Danny's Velrani got better. KindnessHFY's English improved. Sometimes they mixed the two together, creating a strange new way of speaking that only they could understand. Stage 5 complete. Stage 6 was the trial of trust. This was the hardest one. The trial required them to face a challenge together, something that would test their bond. In the old days on KindnessHFY's homeworld, couples would go into the desert and survive for 7 days with nothing but each other. But they were not on her homeworld. They were on a space station, so they had to find another way. The opportunity came when a power failure hit the lower levels. The backup systems failed. Life support was dying. If someone did not fix it within 6 hours, the people living in that section would suffocate. Danny was sent to fix it. It was a dangerous job. The area was dark and cold and filled with broken equipment. One wrong move and the whole section could lose pressure. KindnessHFY went with him. They worked together for hours. Danny fixed the wires while KindnessHFY held the lights. He crawled through tight spaces while she watched his back. When a support beam fell and nearly crushed him, she caught it with 2 of her arms and held it up until he could crawl free. They saved the section. They saved the people. When they climbed back out into the main corridors, covered in dirt and sweat and exhaustion, Danny looked at KindnessHFY and knew that he trusted her with his life. Stage 6 complete. 1 stage left. Pete Harris heard about what had happened. He called Danny into his office and sat him down. "Are you sure about this?" Pete asked. "Once you complete the final stage, it is done. You will be bonded to her under every law in the galaxy." Danny nodded. "I am sure." Pete studied him for a moment. Then he smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real. "Good luck," he said. The final stage required witnesses. It required someone from the Velrani people to oversee the vows. Pete made some calls. 3 days later, A ship arrived at the station carrying an elder named Vethkal. She was old. Her blue skin was lined with wrinkles, and her silver eyes had faded to a pale gray. But she walked with strength, and when she looked at Danny, he felt like she could see right through him. She spoke to Kyraveth in their language, a long conversation that Danny could not follow. Then she turned to him. "You are human," she said in accented English. "Your people are young. You do not know the weight of our traditions." Danny met her eyes. "I know enough." Vethkal tilted her head. "You gave warmth to a stranger. You learned our ways. You chose to walk this path, even when you could have walked away. Why?" Danny thought about it. He thought about the cargo bay, about the blanket, about all the small moments that had led him here. "Because she was cold," he said. "And I could not just leave her in the cold." Vethkal stared at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "That is a good answer." The ceremony was held in the observation deck. It was not a big crowd. Lisa was there, grinning like she had won a bet. Pete was there, standing in the back with his arms crossed. A few of Danny's co-workers came, curious to see what would happen, and a handful of Veroni who had heard about the ceremony and traveled to witness it. Danny stood facing Kyraveth. She was wearing a white robe, simple and clean. Her silver eyes were bright with emotion. Vethkal stood between them. She spoke in Velrini and then in English, explaining the meaning of the final vow. "This is not a promise of love," she said. "Love comes and goes like the wind. This is a promise of warmth. A promise that you will never let each other face the cold alone. A promise that whatever comes, you will stand together." She looked at Danny. "Speak your vow." Danny had practiced this. He had worked on the words for days, trying to get them right in Velrini. He took a deep breath. "I promise to give you warmth," he said. "When the universe is dark, I will be your light. When the wind is cold, I will be your shelter. From this day until my last day, I will stand beside you." Kyraveth's eyes were wet. She spoke her vow in response, her voice shaking with emotion. "I promise to give you warmth. When you are tired, I will carry you. When you are lost, I will find you. From this day until my last day, you will never be alone." Vethkal raised her hands. "The bond is made," she said. "Let none break it." Kyraveth pressed her forehead against Danny's. He felt her warmth, her breath, her heartbeat. They stayed like that while the watching crowd cheered. Lisa threw a party in the maintenance bay that night. There was food and drinks and music. Danny danced badly. Kyraveth danced worse. They laughed together until their sides hurt. Later, when the party was winding down, someone asked Danny the question he knew was coming. "Why did you do it?" they asked. "You barely knew her. It was just a blanket and a meal bar. Why did you let it become this?" Danny looked at Kyraveth across the room. She was talking to Lisa, her forearms moving as she tried to explain something. Lisa was laughing. He smiled. "Where I come from," he said, "you do not leave someone freezing in the dark. And if showing kindness means something more to them than it does to me, then maybe I was the one who needed to learn something." He paused. "Humans are good at a lot of things. We build ships. We explore stars. We fight wars and make peace. But maybe the best thing we do is the small stuff. The blankets, the meals, the moments when we sit with someone who is hurting and just let them know they are not alone." He looked back at the person who had asked. "That is what makes us human." Outside the window, the stars burned bright against the endless dark. And inside, surrounded by friends old and new, Danny Cole held his mate's hand and felt warm for the first time in years. The universe was vast and cold and full of danger, but as long as they had each other, they would be fine. And that, in the end, was what humanity had always been about. Simple kindness, given freely, changing everything.